I'm here this afternoon with Lieutenant Mike Hernandez, who is seeking the position of Police Chief for San Angelo. Last time we visited, you had not filed at that time. I think you might have still been considering it. But you're official now. You're in the race. There are some issues, I'm sure, that helped make that decision for you, that you felt was important to step up to the plate. You've been working in alongside your fellow officers for 20-something years, and you know the police department well here. You also, last time I believe, mentioned a number of capacities in which you have served. What is the feeling from the officers out there about what's going on now, not only in the police department, community relation, but also the police department itself? We've had growth, we've had a population, we had the oil boom, it's fallen back now, kind of leveled back off, but our crime rate is continuing to climb. There's no question that that is happening. San Angelo Live gives us a day-to-day report, and even recently reported that we were, what, number 8 in the state of a place, was it most likely to be murdered? And so what is the feeling from inside the police department as to what's needed?
As an officer that works with his troops out on the street, being assigned to the night shift on patrol, I recently had the opportunity to work with my guys on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve. And what I saw were officers leaving in the morning totally worn out, just done from responding from call to call. And what I saw was we definitely didn't have enough officers on the street. We all left that morning just dog tired from all the calls for service that we had that night. There was a time that we had up to 26 on a shift, and I currently, as a lieutenant over Charles Company, have 16. When someone says we have the manpower, we have the officers, it's not true. You have sergeants and lieutenants that are doing patrolmen's jobs, which I'm willing to do as a lieutenant over my crew that lead by example. But the best part about this is that we have so many good officers in this police department. They're willing to do the job. It's just hard to do the job. When we left that morning when we were tired, we came back the next night. It was wonderful to see these officers ready to go after it again. I, of course, was asking them to calm down because I'm older and wiser and it takes me a few days to recoup. But I want to give them, the officers, their backups that they need to do this job.
So do you feel like we need to hire additional men, or is it that we don't have them allocated in the right areas?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I definitely want to move some officers around as far as I believe patrol is the backbone of the police department. I definitely would like to get on those face-to-face meetings with city council, city entity, to make those relationships better so that we can get what we need for the police department. I believe I can do the job. I believe I can get that done. But being there with the troops, I see it on a day-to-day basis. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Crime is up in San Angelo. The best thing about our town, though, is that it's still small enough right now. Somehow, some way, the guys and gals that work down at that police department, they get the job done. We get to meet new criminals within 2 days of visiting San Angelo. And if it be, then if we can send them on their way, that's fine too. But they're usually in jail within a couple of days, and we get to know that new person committing the crimes. The only problem is they commit 10, 12, 15 crimes before we can do anything with them as far as longevity, whether that be prison, getting help for narcotics use.
Now that's another issue that I think we need to better understand. Why does it take multiple reoccurrences or crimes to occur before something they're sent away? It seems like they're just released back into the community.
Well, there's no doubt there's only so much room in the jails. There's no doubt that even the state only has so much money to house prisoners. You know, that's something that I would say, being at my level, is above my pay grade, if you will. But there's an answer to all this as far as the community working together. There's so many different entities when you talk about trying to get someone help, whether that be for alcohol, drugs, counseling, prison, whatever the answer is, if we're all on the same page working for the same goals, we can get this done. It's not something that just a police officer should be trying to decide. There's so many people involved in this. I'll never forget when I'm working 22 plus years of my 25 years within the schools as a school resource officer. I got to work with counselors, juvenile probation officers, principals, parents to get things done. And for instance, getting a young man out of a gang that he just decided, you know what, I don't want to be part of a gang no more. I don't want to go to jail on a daily basis. I don't want to go to the Texas Youth Commission. I would tell them this is how we're going to do it. And if everybody was on the same page, we could get it done. Getting a young man out of a gang is tough. But when everybody's on the same page, working towards that same goal, we accomplished it many times over and over throughout my career. You know, gang members they're like cockroaches. If you turn the light on, they will run.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing, spotlight on them. Out of sight, out of mind. You blame it on your parent one night because you're going out of town, or you're having to do chores that your mom or dad they're not letting you leave. You know, it's awful hard to compete when it's something that's the only thing they know. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When Officer Brito is only in their lives while they're at school that day, if he's there all day. It may just be half a day. But this is stuff that I was doing as far as extra overtime, if you will. But when we had them, while we had them, whether that's at school, church, getting them involved after school programs as far as sports are concerned, then hang on to them for as long as we have them and try to make that time shorter as far as being with those gangbangers after school, to where they're not doing the crimes. And what they do is they move on. They think, well, you know what, he's never around anyway, he's out of sight, out of mind, let's move on to someone else that'll say yes. And then if it's necessary, the ones that are pushing, let's go do crime, and we have to lock them up, then so be it.
Are you seeing a growth in the gangs here in San Angelo?
What I'm saying is it's not a growth, it's come back up. What I learned in the gang unit in my time was that as long as you kept a spotlight on them, we were gonna keep them down. We were gonna suppress the crime. We were very successful in the 90s. Our gang unit has had a tendency to refocus its efforts on narcotics. It's a no-no. Everybody in the gang world, as far as law enforcement is concerned, knows this. When I created the Special Operations Unit from the ground up, I visited many an agency in the state of Texas to create this unit. The first thing they said was, don't attach that unit to narcotics. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to do multiple different crimes, and you can't do that. You have to maintain the focus where it needs to be. And so if we could bring back a gang unit to keep these, even if it's just documented, even if it's just field contacts, just visiting with them, they're wanted for a warrant. Whatever it may be, they're going to realize they're going to know exactly who those gang officers are. Those officers are going to know all those kids by either their real name, a nickname, or they're going to know somebody that knows that gang member. It's easy to stay on top of.
Is it the gang members and the drugs that's driving the crime rate here in our community?
Absolutely. And they do go hand in hand, because what will happen is somebody that's been doing it for a while, somebody that's the drug dealer, the kingpin, whatever you want to call them, gets these youngsters to do their bidding. And it's things like, you're not going to get in as much trouble as I am. You're still a juvenile. These kids have no clue. One of the things that I know that's very successful with a gang unit is they realize that unit is working them specifically, and they actually look up to these guys. The weirdest thing is sometimes they look up to them to the point of they just wish they could break the cycle and maybe even become a police officer. They want family. They want somebody that pays attention to them. They want to feel like they belong to something. And I say they can break the cycle. As long as they don't commit a felony, they still have an opportunity to say, go to the military, come home, and become a law enforcement officer. It's basically what I did.
So what kind of age are the kids that are getting pulled into the gangs? How young is this happening in our community here?
They're very young, even down to about, I would dare say, all the way down to 10 years old to sometimes 19 is the range, but every now and then you have that lifer that he became a gang member in the prison system, and he's 65,
Oh, wow.
which is remarkable.
Wow. I know that tattoos have caught on tremendously. It's a very popular thing to have, but it's also something that's very strongly related to gangs and their markings and symbols and all. Are you seeing a lot of the tattoos with symbols here in our community?
We've always had that here in San Angelo, and I'm not just going to blanket that the tattoos are you know, such to the point that they have to automatically be tied to the gangs. But a lot of times the gang members do. They'll have certain tattoos that they use within themselves that has meaning to them until we can learn that meaning, whether that be initials for their nicknames, initials for the gang, whatever it may be, areas, parts of town, parts of the country. When we don't know a certain area code and that kid comes in with these numbers, those three numbers don't mean anything to us as far as, you know, Texas is concerned, with us once being 915 and now 325. You know, I've even joked with some of the gang members, so do you cross yourself out when you're 915 and now you're 325? That type of thing. Their nicknames, they definitely give us all the information we need. We prefer they continue to do tattoos, but they're actually trying to start telling these youngsters, stop doing it where the officers can see it, because they're getting all the information they need from you.
Interesting.
Yes,
Interesting.
Very interesting.
What is the mood among the officers? Because I know that there's been a lot of, or it appears to be that there's been a lot of turnover, a lot of retirement, and I know that listening to a lot of the meet and confer and some of the discussion there about the excellent training we have of officers, and then they don't stay and things like that. What are you seeing on that?
What I would say is San Angelo is definitely a stepping stone to a bigger law enforcement venue in the state of Texas, if you will. We have long since been known as that small department that can't pay, that go on to the bigger city for more crime, to fight more crime, if you will. I believe we lose a little bit of capturing those officers for their careers when we don't sell this department, this town, this just a wonderful community that we have to offer these guys in our recruitment efforts. Nothing against the current recruiters, but when I decided to become a Marine, I shall never forget the Marine that stepped onto Central High School campus when I was a senior in his blues. And I thought to myself, I want to be one of those guys. I want to be a Marine. I think we should be sending our best. I think we need to sell this town like nobody's business. We have lakes here, we have hunting, we have everything the big city offers to a certain degree. And if not, they're within range to visit. We have take-home program. We have good schools. These officers are raising their families as well. And they see it when they stay here long enough, they start to raise their families. They look back and think, you know what, I don't mind visiting the big city. I just don't want to live there, because they see nothing but crime on the news.
Yeah.
And if you've been paying attention, there's a certain news media here in San Angelo that reports nothing but crime.
Yes.
And so I want to keep San Angelo what it is. And we have something wonderful here. I have always felt like we have a bubble out here in West Texas.
Yes.
Even though we're the metroplex of this area, that there's lots of folks that come visit us on weekends, or when there's something in like the rodeo and the hotels are filled up. That's great. But as an officer, what happens for us is we now have to patrol all those hotels that have all those extra cars in town. And you know, the bad guys, they're not so that they don't pay attention. They understand when something's going on. The parking lot at the Coliseum's full, there's a target. It's an easy target. There's a place for them to hide in the dark. And I'm asking that if I believe if I can get in there and work with the who's who makes the decisions that makes this town run, that we can get the job done. I just need a few officers. I need to move some officers around. I need to put the right officers in the right places so that we can do this together.
Naturally, I've got to ask you about a budget. Do you think with the current budget, you can do what you feel needs to be done in that department, or do you feel like it's going to take additional monies? Where are you on that, or does it depend on some things?
I'm definitely not privy to the information as far as what a chief sees on a daily basis yet, but there's no doubt in my mind, there's those officers that I can put in those places that are going to help me do this job. But from the outside, if this makes sense, from the outside of administration, but not the outside the department,
Okay.
what I've seen is there has been some spending that is questionable. There are some things that I see just as, say, the person that does the bills here in my home. There's some places that I see, why don't we spend that money there? Why don't we put our efforts over here? Or why aren't we allowing our officers to attend training, whereas if we do send 1 or 2 officers to a training, we bring them home to teach us all, so that we keep that training within budget, not using our budget on administration to go to training. We are required by state law as officers to do 40 hours of T-code training every 2 years. Sufficient for someone that has done 25 plus years. There's only so much training to be done. And some of that needs to be in the state as well. We need to keep that training local. Maybe we can even host more training. You know, we have a wonderful staff. We, at one time, we worked with COG, the Council of Governments. We don't do that anymore. It's very rare. I recently attended as a lieutenant some training at COG that was provided free. There was no reason we shouldn't have had several officers to try to get some of that training under their belt. There's a lot of things that I can see that we're spending money for maybe even certain jobs within the police department that don't require an officer. Something that would allow me to put more officers on the street.
Interesting. Speaking of spending money, we just recently, what is the new big, I call it, several of us were calling it the beast when they brought it to the city council meeting the other day. Tell me some information about that.
An armored personnel carrier is definitely, there's no doubt it's on the forefront of many a person's mind as far as a police department going military, being militarized. As a former SWAT member and team leader of my team, 10 of my 20 years, I worked towards a armored personnel carrier about 10 years ago. We actually had the funding provided from the city to purchase an armored personnel carrier that would have taken my troops to a raid, if you will, or allowed a negotiator to negotiate with the bad guy at gunpoint, face to face.
Wow.
And be safe.
You said the money was provided years ago. What happened?
The money was spent throughout the department. It was actually given to the city, the city council actually gave it to the police department to purchase an armored personnel carrier for the SWAT team. As I understand it, it was about $159,000. We never purchased that vehicle. This is public information as far as I'm concerned. We now had to go through the government to get this vehicle for free. I was part of that as the former SWAT team leader. I believe the paperwork was there 2 years ago to pick up this vehicle through the government. Luckily, our governor in the state of Texas has said we can still do this, whether our president allows us to or not. But it is needed. Folks don't understand, with San Angelo being the hub of this area, the border being so close, Ethicon, Goodfellow, ASU, Eden Detention Center, we need that vehicle. We've had to call other agencies within the state of Texas, Abilene and Midland, to use theirs. And it's only to protect those officers from the bad guys from being killed. That vehicle will be priceless the day it saves a life. I know years ago, Odessa lost 3 officers. They didn't have that vehicle. The next day, the community bought Odessa PD that vehicle. I was trying to be proactive as a team leader of our SWAT team to get that vehicle here early on. And it's sad to say that we're just now getting that vehicle here. I know folks, with all the things that are happening in the country today, worry about a police state. That's not what it's for. It's to save lives.
And save an officer's life as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Is there anything else in particular that you would like to share with our audience at this time?
The only thing I can say is when I get passionate about my job, this job that I feel like I truly just started yesterday, I know lots of folks that I've come in contact that when I've done my job that I signed on to do years ago, that I signed on to protect and serve, and then realized, you know what, I'm serving more than I'm protecting. I serve 95% of the time, and I want to change that culture down there at the police department from the top down to where the youngest officer looks up to his chief and says, I want to be just like that guy. I want to serve like that guy. I want to look at my career 25 years down the road and feel like I just started yesterday.
Wow, well said. Thank you so much for your time today. Really do appreciate it. Look forward to visiting with you again.
Thank you.